The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. Thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds sat in floating chairs that moved up and down like a giant spiral. The air smelled strange, a mix of different breathing gases that each species needed to stay alive. Ambassador Velcris stood at the center of it all. His blue skin had turned a darker shade, which meant he was very worried. His forearms moved as he talked, pointing at the huge screen that showed pictures of dead worlds. "Look at this," Velcris said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall through the translation machines. 3 months ago, this was Kalani Prime. 5 million people lived there. Now look. The screen showed a planet that looked like someone had eaten it. The surface was gray and empty. No cities, no forests, no oceans, just rock and dust. The Devourers did this, Velcris continued. They landed on Kalani Prime, and in just 2 days they ate everything. Every plant, every animal, every person. They even ate the buildings. A sound like thunder rolled through the hall. It was the sound of thousands of different species all making noise at once. Some screaming, some clicking, some making sounds that had no name. Captain Juan sat in the human section, which was much smaller than most others. Only 12 humans were in the entire Galactic Council, but they were always quiet and always watching. Juan was an older man with gray hair and scars on his hands. Next to him sat Lieutenant Nari, a young woman who wrote down everything in a small computer. "The Devourers are not like other enemies," Velcris went on. "They don't want land or gold or power. They just want to eat, and they never stop eating. Our scouts say they have already moved to the next system. In 1 week, they will reach Harvan. In 2 weeks, they will reach the trade routes. If we don't stop them now, they will eat the entire galaxy." The hall became quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The Devourers had been just stories before, scary tales that parents told children to make them behave. But now they were real and they were coming. "We need an army," Velcris said. "Not just any army. We need the biggest army the galaxy has ever seen. 1 million soldiers. Maybe 2 million. We need ships and guns and bombs. We need everything." Different species started talking at once. The Kravani said they could give 50,000 soldiers. The Zephyrians offered their best warships. The Harmony Collective said they would share their shield technology. But everyone looked at the humans. Captain Juan stood up slowly. The hall became quiet again. When humans spoke at the council, other species always listened. Not because humans were the strongest or the smartest, but because they were different. They thought about problems in ways that no other species did. "We have heard your request," Juan said. His voice was calm and quiet, but it carried to every corner of the hall. "Earth understands how serious this is. The Devourers are indeed a threat to all life in the galaxy." Velcris nodded quickly. "Then you will help? You will send soldiers?" Juan smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We will help. But we will not send an army." The sound that came from the hall was like a hurricane. Species were shouting and screaming and making angry noises. Some of the flying chairs bumped into each other as their owners got excited. "What do you mean?" Velcris shouted over the noise. His skin had turned almost black now. "You must send soldiers. Without human help, we cannot win." "We did not say we would not send soldiers," Juan replied. "We said we would not send an army." Lieutenant Nari stood up next to him. She was small compared to most of the aliens in the hall, but she spoke clearly. "The human government will provide a military response to the Devourer threat. Our answer will be delivered within 48 hours. 48 hours? Velcris could not believe what he was hearing. It takes 48 hours just to move an army to the transport ships. How can you prepare anything in such a short time? Juan was already walking toward the exit. Because we don't need to prepare. We just need to give the order. As the humans left the hall, Bin, the human military officer, walked close to Nari. "The council will not like this," he whispered. Nari looked back at the chaos in the Great Hall. Thousands of aliens were still shouting and arguing. They asked for help. They're going to get it. They just don't know what kind of help yet. "Admiral Saul has been waiting for this call for 3 years, Bin said. The teams are already in place." "Good," Juan said as they reached their ship. "Because the Devourers won't wait for the council to stop arguing." Their ship was small and black, nothing like the huge, colorful ships that other species used. It lifted off silently and disappeared into space. Back in the council hall, Velcris was trying to calm everyone down. "Please, we must think about this carefully. The humans have never failed to keep their word. If they say they will help, they will help. "But not with an army," shouted Crix, the representative from the warrior planet Bloodstone. "How can anyone fight the Devourers without an army? Our war computers say we need at least 2 million soldiers just to slow them down." "Maybe the humans have secret weapons," suggested Yila from the tech world of Circuit Prime. "They are always making new technology. Maybe they built something that can stop the Devourers." "Secret weapons won't help when millions of those things come pouring out of space," Crix replied. "This isn't a problem you can solve with fancy gadgets. You need bodies. Lots of bodies." Far away from the council hall in the dark space between stars, 3 ships waited. They were so black that they seemed to eat light. No one could see them unless they knew exactly where to look. On the biggest ship, Admiral Saul stood in the command center. She was a tall woman with short hair and eyes that never seemed to blink. Around her, 30 people worked at computers and control panels. They moved quietly and efficiently like parts of a machine. "Message from Captain Juan," said Tay, the communications officer. The council meeting went as expected. "We have official permission to proceed." Admiral Saul nodded. "Send the signal to all teams. Operation Silent Reaper is now active." Across the galaxy, in hidden places that no one else knew about, humans began to move. They had been waiting in the shadows for months, learning about the Devourers, watching their patterns, finding their weaknesses. These were not ordinary soldiers. Each one had been changed by technology and training that most species thought was impossible. They were faster than any natural human, stronger than most aliens, and their minds worked in ways that their enemies could never predict. Kyung checked his weapons one more time. He and his partner Yoon had spent 2 months getting close to the main Devourer hive ship. They looked like traders selling food, but hidden in their cargo were enough explosives to destroy a moon. "Ready?" Yoon asked. She was smaller than Kyung, but just as dangerous. The computer implants behind her eyes were already calculating the best routes through the enemy ship. "Ready," Kyung replied. "Time to show the galaxy what humans do when someone threatens our neighbors." In another part of space, Wu and his team prepared for their own mission. They had been living on a Devourer supply station for 3 weeks, pretending to be refugees. The aliens who ran the station thought they were just scared civilians running from the war. They were wrong. The galaxy had asked for an army to fight the Devourers. But armies were slow and expensive and easy to see coming. The humans had decided to try something different. Instead of sending 1 million soldiers to fight a war, they were sending 36 people to end it. The 3 human ships hung in space like sleeping predators. From the outside, they looked empty and dead. No lights, no heat signatures, no radio signals. But inside, 36 of the most dangerous humans ever created were getting ready to change the galaxy forever. Admiral Saul walked through the corridors of her ship, the Silent Promise. The walls were dark gray metal, and the only sounds were the quiet hum of life support and the soft footsteps of her crew. This was not like other military ships that were full of noise and bright lights. This ship was built for one purpose: to deliver death without being seen. "Ma'am," called Tay from his station. "We're getting reports from all teams. Kyung and Yoon are inside the main hive ship. Wu's team has reached the supply depot. Jin and his group are in position at the breeding facility." Saul nodded but didn't smile. She never smiled when people were about to die, even when those people were trying to eat the galaxy. "Any problems?" "None so far. The Devourers still think our people are just refugees and traders. They have no idea what's coming." That was the beauty of the human plan. Other species would have sent huge fleets with thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. The Devourers would have seen them coming from light years away and prepared for a big battle. But humans had learned something different from their history. Sometimes the best way to win a war was to make sure the enemy never knew they were fighting one. On the Devourer hive ship, Kyung moved through the dark corridors like a shadow. The ship was huge, bigger than most space stations. It was also alive. The walls were made of some kind of organic material that pulsed like a heartbeat. The floor felt squishy under his feet, and the air smelled like rotting meat. Yoon was 20 meters behind him, carrying the special equipment they would need. To anyone watching, they looked like 2 humans trying to escape from something scary. Kyung even limped a little as if he had been hurt. The Devourer guards ignored them completely. "How many?" Yoon whispered into her communicator. 15,000 on this ship alone, Kyung replied. "But they're not the target. We need to find the queen." The Devourer Queen was not just the leader of this hive ship. She was the brain that controlled every single Devourer on the ship. If she died, the others would become confused and helpless. It was like cutting the head off a snake. But first they had to find her. Kyung had studied the ship's layout for weeks using stolen Devourer files. The Queen would be in the center of the ship in the most protected area. Getting there would mean going through hundreds of guards and security systems, or it would for most people. Kyung reached into his coat and pulled out what looked like a simple black box. But this box contained technology that was 20 years ahead of anything the rest of the galaxy had seen. He pressed a button and suddenly every electronic system around them went dead. The lights went out. The security cameras stopped working. Even the door locks failed. "Go," Kyung whispered. They moved through the ship like ghosts. The Devourers were confused by the power failure and running around trying to fix things. None of them noticed two humans slipping past them in the darkness. Meanwhile, on a Devourer supply station, Wu and his team were preparing for their own mission. The station was smaller than the hive ship, but just as important. This was where the Devourers kept all their food, fuel, and equipment. Destroy this place, and the entire Devourer fleet would be stuck without supplies. Wu's team was different from Kyung's. Instead of sneaking around, they had spent weeks becoming part of the station. Ray worked in the food storage area. June had gotten a job maintaining the computers. Yi was pretending to be a scared refugee who helped clean the corridors. To the Devourers, they were just harmless humans who had nowhere else to go. The aliens actually felt sorry for them. Phase 1 complete, Ray reported through her hidden communicator. I've planted the charges in all the food storage areas. When they go off, this station won't be able to feed anyone for months. Phase 2 ready? June added. I've uploaded the virus into their computer system. It's sleeping right now, but when Wu gives the signal, every machine on this station will turn against its owners. Yi was in the main reactor room, supposedly cleaning the floors, but hidden in his cleaning supplies were enough explosives to turn the entire station into space dust. Phase 3 ready? Just say the word. Wu looked at his watch. In exactly 3 minutes, Kyung would reach the Devourer Queen. When she died, every Devourer in the galaxy would feel it. They would know that something terrible was happening. The humans had to move fast before the enemy could react. 30 seconds, Wu whispered to his team. Remember, we're not trying to fight our way out. We just need to break everything and disappear. Back on the hive ship, Kyung and Yoon had reached the Queen's chamber. The door was massive, 10 meters tall and covered with strange symbols that hurt to look at. But doors meant nothing to humans who had trained for this mission their entire lives. Yoon pulled out a small device that looked like a metal spider. She placed it on the door and stepped back. The device began to glow and slowly a hole appeared in the door. The metal simply dissolved away, leaving an opening just big enough for them to crawl through. Inside, the Queen's chamber was like a nightmare. The walls were covered with a thick black substance that moved and shifted like it was alive. The air was so thick with strange gases that Kyung could barely see. But in the center of the room he could make out something huge. The Devourer Queen was the size of a building. Her body was a disgusting mix of insect and machine, with dozens of arms and legs and eyes. Tubes connected her to the walls, carrying information to and from every Devourer on the ship. She was beautiful and horrible at the same time. Who dares? The Queen spoke, but not with her mouth. The words appeared directly in Kyung's head. Who enters my sacred space? Kyung stepped forward, pulling out his weapon. It looked like a normal rifle, but it fired concentrated plasma that could cut through almost anything. My name is Kyung. I represent the human race. The Queen laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. Humans, the little mammals from the edge of the galaxy? You amuse me, tiny creature. I have eaten entire worlds. What can one small human do to me? This, Kyung said and pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt hit the Queen right between her largest set of eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her massive body began to convulse. Black liquid sprayed from the wound as she screamed, not with her voice, but with her mind. Every Devourer on the ship felt that scream. Impossible, the Queen gasped. No weapon can. How did you? We studied you, Yoon said, stepping up beside Kyung with her own weapon ready. We learned how you think, how you fight, how you live, and then we built weapons specifically designed to kill you. The Queen tried to move, tried to call for help, but the plasma had damaged the parts of her brain that controlled the hive mind. For the first time in her life, she was alone in her own head. Kyung fired again. This time, the queen's massive head exploded in a shower of black gore. Her body twitched a few times and then went still. All around the ship, 15,000 Devourer soldiers suddenly stopped what they were doing. Without their queen to tell them what to think, they just stood there, confused and helpless. Target eliminated, Kyung reported calmly. Beginning Phase 2. At the same moment on the supply station, Wu gave his team the signal. Now. The explosions that followed could be seen from 3 star systems away. The food storage areas went first, followed by the fuel depots, then the weapons stockpiles. June's virus turned every computer on the station against its operators, opening airlocks and shutting down life support. Yi's charges in the reactor created a chain reaction that tore the entire station apart. In less than 10 minutes, the most important Devourer supply base in the galaxy had been reduced to floating debris. Similar scenes were playing out across Devourer space. Other human teams were destroying breeding facilities, communication centers, and command posts. Each strike was quick, precise, and devastating. Admiral Saul watched the reports coming in from her ship. Target after target was falling to her teams. The Devourers had spent months building up their invasion force, and the humans were tearing it apart in a single night. Casualties? She asked Tay. None so far. All teams are reporting successful mission completion. Seoul allowed herself a small nod of satisfaction. This was how humans fought wars. Not with millions of soldiers, but with a few dozen specialists who knew exactly what to do and how to do it. The galaxy had asked for an army. But armies were for fighting other armies. The Devourers weren't an army, they were a disease. And the best way to cure a disease was with surgical precision, not brute force. The war that was supposed to last for years was already over. The Devourers just didn't know it yet. The destruction of the Devourer hive ship was beautiful and terrible to watch from space. The massive vessel, which had been moving steadily toward the next populated system, suddenly began to break apart. Explosions bloomed along its length like deadly flowers, and pieces of the ship scattered in all directions. Inside the ship, chaos ruled. Without their queen to guide them, the Devourers wandered around like lost children. Some of them tried to fight the explosions that were tearing their ship apart. Others just stood still, waiting for orders that would never come. A few of the smarter ones tried to escape in smaller ships, but Kyung and Yoon had made sure that all the escape routes were blocked. Time to go, Yoon said, watching the destruction spread through the ship. They had done their job, but staying any longer would mean dying with their enemies. Kyung nodded and activated a small device on his belt. Instantly, their human ship detected the signal and began moving toward them. The ship was still invisible to Devourer sensors, but it could find its own people anywhere in the galaxy. As they made their way back through the dying ship, they passed groups of confused Devourers. The aliens looked at them with their huge compound eyes, but did nothing. Without their queen's commands, they couldn't even remember how to be aggressive. It's almost sad, Yoon said, stepping over a Devourer that was just sitting on the floor, staring at nothing. Don't feel sorry for them, Kyung replied. Remember what they did to Kelani Prime. 5 million people died screaming while these things ate them alive. Yoon's expression hardened. She had studied the reports from the attacked worlds. The Devourers didn't just kill their victims quickly. They kept them alive as long as possible, eating them piece by piece. Children, adults, elderly people, it didn't matter. To the Devourers, they were all just food. Their extraction ship arrived exactly on schedule. It was a small black craft that could barely hold 4 people. As soon as they were inside, it shot away from the dying hive ship and disappeared into hyperspace. Behind them, the ship that had carried 15,000 Devourers finally broke in half. The explosion was so bright that it lit up 3 nearby planets. Across the galaxy, similar victories were happening everywhere. At the Devourer breeding facility, Jin and his team had done something much worse than just destroying the buildings. They had poisoned the genetic pools that the Devourers used to create new soldiers. Instead of making more warriors, the facility would now produce Devourers that would die within hours of being born. Beautiful work, Jin said, watching the chaos through a hidden camera. Devourer scientists were running around trying to figure out what had gone wrong. They won't realize what we did for weeks. By then, their entire breeding program will be ruined. His partner Sue was planting the final explosives around the facility's power core. Should we leave them a message? Let them know who did this? No need, Jin replied. Dead enemies don't need explanations. At the communication center, another human team had done something even more clever. Instead of destroying the facility, they had taken control of it. Now every message that the Devourers tried to send to their scattered fleets was being changed by human computers. Orders to attack became orders to retreat. Requests for supplies became requests to surrender. Coordinates for safe meeting places became coordinates for the middle of empty space. "This is almost too easy," said Mina, the team's communication expert. She was sitting at a Devourer control station, typing commands that would confuse the enemy for months. They never learned to encrypt their messages. They just assumed that no one else was smart enough to understand them. Her partner, Dong, was working on the facility's computer system. Pride comes before the fall. The Devourers thought they were so powerful that they didn't need to be careful. That made them perfect targets. But the most important battle was happening at the Devourer High Command Center. This was where the overall strategy for conquering the galaxy was planned. It was also where the backup queens lived, smaller versions of the hive ship. Queen who could take over if something happened to their larger sisters. The facility was on a dead planet with no atmosphere and temperatures cold enough to freeze metal. The Devourers had chosen it because they thought no other species could survive there long enough to attack. They were wrong. Juan's team had been living in hidden bunkers on the planet for 2 months, using advanced life support systems that the Devourers couldn't detect. They had watched the aliens come and go, learning their schedules and security procedures. 3 backup queens, Juan reported to Admiral Sol, plus about 50 senior commanders and 1,000 support staff. If we can eliminate this facility, the Devourers will lose their ability to coordinate their remaining forces. Proceed, Sol replied from her ship. But be careful. This is their most important base. It will be heavily defended. Juan smiled grimly. He was the same Captain Juan who had spoken to the Galactic Council, but now he was wearing black armor and carrying weapons that could cut through tank armor. Heavy defenses work both ways, Admiral. They keep enemies out, but they also trap enemies inside. The assault on the command center began at exactly midnight local time. Juan and his team didn't try to sneak in like the other groups had done. Instead, they walked right up to the front door and knocked. The Devourer guards were confused. According to their sensors, these were just 4 humans in environment suits, probably lost explorers who had crashed on the planet. They opened the doors to capture what they thought would be easy prisoners. The first guard died before he even saw Juan move. The human's monomolecular blade went through Devourer armor like it was made of paper. The second guard managed to raise an alarm before Juan's partner, Yoon, shot him with a weapon that turned his entire body into smoke. "So much for the quiet approach," said their third team member, Kang. "Quiet was never the plan," Juan replied, pulling out a much larger weapon. "The plan was fast. What followed was not a battle, it was an execution." The Devourers had built their command center to keep enemies out, but they had never imagined enemies like these. Humans who moved faster than their eyes could follow, weapons that could kill through any armor, technology that turned their own defenses against them. The backup queens died in their chambers, never knowing what had killed them. The senior commanders tried to fight back, but human weapons were designed specifically to kill Devourers. Every shot was fatal. Every blade cut through alien flesh like butter. In 15 minutes, the most important Devourer facility in the galaxy was silent. "Command center eliminated," Juan reported. "All backup queens are dead. All senior staff eliminated. Database computers destroyed." "Understood," Sol replied. "Return to base. Phase 3 complete." All across Devourer space, the alien war machine was collapsing. Ships that had been moving toward human and alien worlds suddenly stopped, their crews unsure of what to do next. Supply convoys turned around and headed back to bases that no longer existed. Attack fleets broke apart as individual captains tried to guess what their orders should be. In the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Velcris was receiving reports that he couldn't believe. "Impossible," he kept saying. "This cannot be happening." The reports were coming in from all over the galaxy. Devourer fleets were retreating. Their breeding facilities were silent. Their command structure had simply vanished. "How long has it been since the humans said they would help?" Velcris asked his aide. 18 hours, the aide replied. 18 hours, Velcris repeated. "In 18 hours, they have done what our military computer said would take 2 years and cost millions of lives." On the main screen, intelligence reports showed the current status of the Devourer threat. 3 days ago, They had been an unstoppable force that would devour the galaxy. Now they were scattered groups of confused aliens with no leadership, no supplies, and no plan. "Send a message to the human fleet," Velcris ordered. "Ask them to return to the council chambers. We need to understand what just happened." But Captain Juan was already on his way back. His small black ship entered the council system, just as Velcris was sending the message. The council hall was packed with representatives from every species in the galaxy. They had come to hear about humanity's response to the Devourer threat. Most of them expected to hear about a great battle, with millions of soldiers fighting for the fate of civilization. Instead, they got something very different. "The Devourer threat has been eliminated," Juan announced simply. The hall erupted in noise. Some species were cheering. Others were demanding proof. A few were asking how it was possible. "Eliminated?" Velcris could barely speak. "All of them?" "The leadership is dead," Juan explained. "The command structure is destroyed. The breeding facilities are gone. The supply network has collapsed. There are still individual devourers alive throughout the galaxy, but they are no longer a coordinated threat. Without their queens and commanders, they will either die of starvation or be easy targets for local security forces." "How many soldiers did you use?" asked Crix from Bloodstone. 36, Juan replied. The hall fell silent. 36 soldiers destroyed an enemy that consumed worlds? Velcris asked. 36 specialists, Juan corrected. "We don't fight armies with armies. We solve problems." Admiral Saul stood on the bridge of the Silent Promise and watched her ships return home. One by one, the small black vessels appeared out of hyperspace and docked with the mothership. Each team that came back brought with them the silence of completed missions and the weight of necessary violence. The operation had been perfect in every way except one. "Final count," Tay reported from his station. 12 teams deployed. 11 teams returned. 35 personnel accounted for. Sol nodded but said nothing. Yi's death had been expected. His mission required someone to stay behind and make sure the supply station was completely destroyed. But expected didn't make it easier. "Where is he?" asked Kyung as he stepped onto the bridge. His black armor was still scorched from the explosions on the hive ship, but he looked unhurt. "Yi stayed with the charges," Yoon said quietly. "The station was too important. If even part of it survived, the Devourers could have rebuilt their supply network." Kyung closed his eyes for a moment. Yi's had been his friend since training began 5 years ago. They had practiced together, fought together, almost died together a dozen times. Now Yi was gone, turned into atoms when the supply station exploded. "He knew," Kyung said finally. "He volunteered for that mission. He knew what it meant. That was the hardest part of being human in a galaxy full of threats. Someone always had to be willing to pay the ultimate price. The other species could send millions of soldiers and accept millions of deaths. Humans sent dozens and mourned every loss. "Debrief in 1 hour," Admiral Saul announced. "Medical evaluation first. I want everyone checked for radiation exposure, biological contamination, and psychological stress." As the teams dispersed to the medical bay, Sol remained on the bridge, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was trying to understand what had just happened. They had asked for an army and received something they had never imagined. Surgical precision applied with deadly efficiency. But Sol knew that the real test was yet to come. Destroying the Devourers had been the easy part. Now humanity would have to deal with the consequences of showing the galaxy exactly how dangerous they could be. "Admiral," Nari called from the communication station. "We're receiving a priority message from Captain Juan at the council chambers." "Put it through." Juan's face appeared on the main screen. He was back in his diplomatic uniform, but Sol could see the tiredness in his eyes. "Admiral, the political situation here is becoming complicated. Several species are demanding full details about our capabilities. Others are already talking about forming defensive alliances against potential human aggression." Sol wasn't surprised. "What's the Council's official position?" "Grateful but nervous," Juan replied. "Ambassador Velcris is trying to keep things calm, but fear spreads fast. When people realize that 36 humans can eliminate a galactic threat in 18 hours, they start wondering what a few hundred humans could do to individual species." "Recommendations? Immediate withdrawal from council space. Let them debate among themselves for a while. The longer we stay, the more paranoid they'll become." Sol considered this. It made sense from a political standpoint. but it also sent a message that might be misunderstood. Very well. We'll return to Earth space within the hour, but maintain normal diplomatic contact. We don't want them to think we're planning something. Understood. Juan out. As the communication ended, Sol turned to her crew. Prepare for departure. Set course for Earth. Meanwhile, in the council chambers, the debate was growing more heated by the hour. They eliminated an existential threat. Velcris was saying for the 10th time. We should be grateful, not suspicious. Grateful, yes, replied Drix from the Techno Collective. But also careful. If humans can destroy the Devourers so easily, what's to stop them from doing the same to us if we displease them? Jex of the Kravani Empire leaned forward in his floating chair. I've run combat simulations based on what we observed. If humans have even 100 of these specialists, they could cripple any single species within days. If they have 1,000, he didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. 1,000 human specialists could probably destroy the entire Galactic Council if they wanted to. But they don't want to, Velcris insisted. Humans have been part of the galactic community for 50 years. They've never shown aggressive intentions toward peaceful species. How do we know? Asked Yilla from Circuit Prime. Maybe they've been planning this all along. Maybe they let the Devourers become a threat just so they could demonstrate their power. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Several species made sounds of agreement. Others looked shocked that anyone would suggest such a thing. Velcris felt his skin turning dark purple again. That's insane. The humans lost people in the Devourer attacks too. Why would they sacrifice their own citizens for a political demonstration? To make it look real, Jex said coldly. Sacrifice a few to intimidate many. It's a classic military strategy. In the human section of the chamber, Bin listened to these accusations with growing anger. He had seen the reports from the attack worlds. He had watched the videos of Devourer feeding frenzies. The idea that humans had somehow planned all of this was not just wrong, it was disgusting. But he kept his mouth shut. His orders were to observe and report, not to defend human honor against alien paranoia. The debate continued for hours. Some species wanted to offer humanity a formal alliance, recognizing that having such powerful friends would be useful. Others wanted to restrict human military activities, demanding that all future operations be approved by the Council. A few extremist groups even suggested trying to capture human specialists for study. That last suggestion made Bin very nervous. If any species was foolish enough to try something like that, the response would make the Devourer elimination look gentle by comparison. As the day wore on, news of the human victory spread throughout the galaxy. On most worlds, the reaction was celebration. The Devourer threat was over. Families could sleep safely again. Children could play outside without watching the sky for death from above. But in government buildings and military headquarters, the reaction was very different. Military planners were trying to figure out how to defend against human-style attacks. Intelligence services were scrambling to learn more about human capabilities. Politicians were wondering if their species needed to change their entire approach to galactic relations. On the peaceful world of Harmony Prime, the ruling council was having an emergency meeting. We need to reconsider our pacifist policies, said Council Leader Zell. If warfare has become this precise and deadly, perhaps we need our own specialists. That goes against everything we believe in, replied Council Member Kira. Violence is never the answer. It was the answer to the Devourers, Zell pointed out. If humans hadn't acted, we would all be dead right now. But at what cost? Kira asked. How many beings died in those attacks? How much suffering did the humans cause? It was a fair question, but also a difficult one. The human teams had been remarkably precise in their targeting. They had killed Devourers by the thousands, but they had also avoided harming any innocent civilians or even neutral aliens who were working on Devourer facilities. In terms of collateral damage, the operation had been almost perfect, but perfect or not, the humans had demonstrated a capacity for violence that made other species deeply uncomfortable. On the military world of Bloodstone, the reaction was completely different. Magnificent, General Crack said, reviewing the tactical reports. Absolutely magnificent. Look at this precision. Look at this efficiency. I've been studying warfare for 200 years and I've never seen anything like it. His aide, Colonel Vrix, was less enthusiastic. It's effective, sir, but it's also terrifying. How do you defend against enemies you can't see until they're killing you? You don't, Krax replied. That's the point. The humans have found a way to make traditional military thinking obsolete. Large armies, massive fleets, fortified positions. None of it matters if your enemy can simply walk past your defenses and kill your leadership. So, what do we do? Krax leaned back in his chair, thinking. We adapt. Or we make sure the humans never have a reason to consider us enemies. Meanwhile, on distant Earth, the human government was having its own debates about the consequences of the operation. The mission was a complete success, reported General Kim to the assembled politicians. 0 military casualties, minimal equipment loss, total elimination of the threat. From a tactical standpoint, it couldn't have gone better. And from a political standpoint, asked President Choi. More complicated, admitted Foreign Minister Park. Several species are demanding information about our capabilities. Others are proposing restrictions on human military activities. There's even talk of economic sanctions if we don't provide full disclosure of our Special Forces program. President Choi sighed. So we saved the galaxy and now they want to punish us for it. Fear is a powerful motivator, General Kim said. They're not ungrateful exactly. They're just scared of what else we might be capable of. Are their fears justified? The president asked. Kim considered the question carefully. We have 47 active specialists. In theory, they could cripple any single species within days. 6 months had passed since the Devourer elimination, and the galaxy had settled into an uncomfortable peace. The threat of being eaten alive was gone, but it had been replaced by something else. The knowledge that somewhere among the stars, humans watched and waited with weapons that could end civilizations. In the rebuilt council chambers, Ambassador Velcris found himself dealing with problems he had never imagined. The monthly security briefing had become a session of paranoia and accusations. The humans refused to tell us how many specialists they have, complained Drix for the 100th time. They could have 10 or they could have 10,000. How are we supposed to make defense plans when we don't know what we're defending against? We're not defending against humans, Velcris replied wearily. They're our allies. They saved us from extinction, did they? Asked Jex, leaning forward in his chair. Or did they eliminate competition? The Devourers were a threat to everyone, including humans. Maybe they just removed a rival predator. Yila nodded agreement. My intelligence services have been studying human history. They have a long tradition of preemptive warfare. They attack enemies before those enemies attack them. That's called good strategy, came a calm voice from the human section. Captain Huan stood up, looking exactly the same as he had 6 months ago. Behind him sat Lieutenant Nari and the new military attaché, Colonel Bin. The human delegation was smaller than most others, but their presence seemed to fill the entire chamber. Honored delegates, Huan said. Walking to the center of the hall, you seem to be under the impression that we're hiding vast armies from you. The reality is both simpler and more complex than you imagine. He activated a holographic display that showed Earth's military structure. These are the facts. Earth maintains exactly 47 active specialists in our elimination program. Not 47,000, not 47 million. 47 people. The chamber fell silent. After months of speculation about secret human armies, the truth was almost anticlimactic. 47, Velcris repeated slowly. You eliminated the Devourers with just 36 people out of a total force of 47? Correct, Juan replied. And that includes support staff, trainers, and people on medical leave. The actual number of operational specialists at any given time is closer to 30. Drix's skin flashed red with confusion. Then why won't you tell us their capabilities? What are these specialists trained to do? They're trained to solve problems that can't be solved with conventional military force, Nari said, standing up beside Juan. Each specialist undergoes years of physical and mental enhancement. They learn to think like their enemies, to find weaknesses that others can't see, and to strike with precision that makes large armies unnecessary. But what are their limits? Jex demanded. How do we know you can't eliminate any of us whenever you want? Colonel Bin smiled coldly. You don't. That's the point. The blunt honesty of his statement sent a chill through the chamber. For months, the aliens had been dancing around their fears. Now a human had stated the truth plainly. They were all at humanity's mercy, and they just had to trust that humans would continue to be merciful. However, Juan continued, his voice calm and reasonable, You're asking the wrong questions. You want to know if we can eliminate you. The better question is, why would we want to? He gestured to the display, which now showed trade statistics and diplomatic records. Humanity profits from galactic peace. We have trade agreements with 80% of Council species. Our colonies depend on alien technology and resources. Our scientists collaborate with researchers from hundreds of worlds. War would be bad for business. But you eliminated the Devourers for free, Yila pointed out. We eliminated a threat to civilization itself, Juan corrected. The Devourers didn't want to trade or negotiate or coexist. They wanted to eat everything, including us. That made them a problem that needed to be solved. Velcris felt some of his old diplomatic instincts returning. So you're saying that humans only use violence against existential threats? Exactly, Juan replied. We don't fight wars to gain territory or resources or political power. We solve problems that threaten the existence of intelligent life. How do we know you're telling the truth? Jex asked suspiciously. Bin leaned forward, his expression deadly serious. Because if we wanted to conquer the galaxy, we would have done it already. We had 12 teams operating across Devourer space for months without anyone detecting them. If our goal was domination, your governments would already be dead and you'd be taking orders from human administrators. The brutal logic of his statement was undeniable. If humans wanted to rule the galaxy, the other species would never have seen them coming. Furthermore, Juan added, our specialists are volunteers who undergo psychological evaluation throughout their training. We don't want people who enjoy killing. We want people who can kill when necessary but who would prefer not to. What kind of person volunteers for that? Velcris asked, genuinely curious. Nari answered quietly. People who lost family on worlds that were attacked by pirates or slavers. People who grew up in refugee camps after their homes were destroyed. People who understand that sometimes violence is the only way to protect innocent life. She paused, then added, people like Yi, who died making sure the Devourers could never rebuild their supply network. He didn't want to die, but he was willing to die if it meant saving others. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. The aliens were beginning to understand that human specialists weren't monsters or conquerors. They were guardians who paid a terrible price for keeping the galaxy safe. So what happens now? Velcris asked finally. Now you go back to your normal lives, Juan said simply. Trade with each other. Explore new worlds. Advance your sciences. Raise your children. Live in peace. And if another threat appears, then we solve it, Bin said matter-of-factly. That's what we do. As the council session ended, representatives from various species began to approach the human delegation. Some wanted to express gratitude. Others wanted to discuss trade agreements. A few wanted to quietly inquire about hiring human specialists for their own problems. We don't rent our people, Juan told them politely. But if you have a genuine threat to civilian populations, we'll investigate. Over the following weeks, the galaxy slowly adjusted to its new reality. The paranoid discussions about human capabilities continued, but they became less frequent. Trade resumed its normal patterns. Scientific expeditions returned to dangerous regions of space, confident that someone was watching for new threats. But the real test of the new order came 4 months later, when the Hegemony Empire decided to invade the peaceful verdant worlds. The Hegemony was a militaristic species that had been eyeing verdant space for years. The verdant people were pacifists who had never developed weapons beyond simple police tools. Under the old system, the invasion would have been a massacre that the Council would have condemned but been unable to prevent. Under the new system, things went very differently. Admiral Sol received the alert while she was reviewing training reports on Earth. Ma'am, Tay reported from his station. We have a developing situation in the verdant system. Hegemony fleet moving to attack. Size of the invasion force? Sol asked. 200 ships, approximately 50,000 soldiers. Sol nodded and turned to her communication officer. Send a message to the Hegemony fleet. Inform them that they are approaching a peaceful species under galactic protection. Advise them to withdraw immediately. And if they ignore the warning, then we solve the problem. The Hegemony fleet did ignore the warning. Their commander, General Vok, had studied the human elimination of the Devourers and concluded that humans only acted against existential threats. A simple invasion of one small species wouldn't trigger human intervention. He was wrong. The Hegemony fleet was 3 hours away from the first verdant world when their ships began to experience technical difficulties. Life support systems started failing. Navigation computers crashed. Communication arrays went dead. Emergency power backups refused to activate. Within 6 hours, the entire invasion fleet was drifting helplessly in space. General Vok found himself sitting in the dark on his flagship, breathing recycled air and wondering what had gone wrong. His technical staff assured him that there was nothing wrong with their equipment. It had all simply stopped working at exactly the same time. That was when he received a message on his personal communication device, the only electronic system on his ship that was still functioning. "General Vok," came a calm human voice. "This is Admiral Soul of the Human Special Operations Command. Your invasion fleet has been disabled. Your ships are not damaged, merely temporarily inoperable. If you withdraw immediately, your systems will be restored within 1 hour. If you continue toward verdant space, your ships will remain disabled until your crews die of starvation." Vok stared at the device in disbelief. "Impossible. No weapon can do this. General," the voice continued patiently. "6 months ago we eliminated a species that consumed worlds. Did you really think a conventional invasion fleet would be difficult for us to handle?" The message ended, leaving Vok alone with his thoughts. Around him, his massive warship drifted silently through space,